Very good, everyone. It's 1:30, so we'll begin the Liquor Control Committee meeting for today. We have quite a few items on the agenda, and if it's okay, we'll start out. We have two new members, Scott Brecky and Tatiana Hackman. And so if it's okay, we'll give them a little opportunity to introduce themselves. I'll have Tatiana go first if you wish. There you go. Just press your button, and if you're green, you're good.
Okay, perfect. Hi, guys. My name is Tatiana. I am a Fargo native. I graduated from Fargo North, went north to Grand Forks for college and law school, and I'm now an attorney at Onstead Twitchell in West Fargo. So that's the basics on me.
Very good. Thank you. Go ahead, Scott.
Scott Brecky, also a graduate from North, so I'm not going to say the year, but from Fargo, worked in background of retail management for 26 years, now currently an outside sales rep, and very excited to be part of this board.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I also graduated from Fargo North, but I did not count that into any of our questions for, I don't believe that, Steve, we tried to be as even as we could. Maybe you can recall that better than I can.
Yeah, my son's graduated from North, but not that we have a theme going here where most of us are wearing blue,
Anyway.
but no, that was not one of the criteria.
Very good. So we'll begin with agenda item number 1. It's to approve the minutes of the July 19th, 2023 regular meeting. We did get the minutes ahead of time with the background information that Steve sent out. If there are any changes or corrections, otherwise we will accept a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, review liquor applications, and 2A, No Bull Incorporated doing business as No Bull Smokehouse located at 609 NP Avenue for a Class Z alcoholic beverage license. Steve.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So this is an ownership transfer. We originally had 4 partners involved with this business. 2 of the original are staying involved in the business, and the other 2 are being removed through this transfer. The Class Z license allows full alcohol. It does in a bar setting, so you can have a physical bar, and it does not require any food sales, although anybody familiar with No Bull knows that you get a lot of excellent food there. So any questions? There were no issues within the background check.
Very good. Any comments or questions? Otherwise, we will accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is 2B, Michelle's Table LLC doing business as Michelle's Table located at 1414 12th Avenue North for a Class GH alcoholic beverage license. Steve.
So, Commissioner, this is for a restaurant up in the, I think it's called the Bison Square or something like that. It's just south of campus there. And the business will have a European bistro kind of theme to it, kind of a French cafe type of thing. We've done the background check, and no issues were involved in that. And it does come from the police chief with a recommendation of approval. Oh, a little background on the GH. The GH is beer and wine, and it does require that food sales exceed alcohol sales, does not allow the physical bar, and it requires that the alcohol be served at a table or a booth.
And so, Steve, I have one question. So do they send you, or do they not have to do that, like a floor plan? When you talk about that, they don't have to, or don't they have to do that?
Yes, we have that in the full application. I kind of pare things down a little bit for what I send out.
No, that's okay, but I was just curious. So basically, it's a restaurant, so there isn't going to be a physical bar in there, but
That's correct.
it's table service, that's what you
Yep.
call that? Okay,
Yep. Table service of the beer and wine.
okay. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
So moved to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 2C, Nahal HHM LLC doing business as Taj India to be located at 2877 45th Street, Suite 100 for a Class GH alcoholic beverage license. Steve.
Again, a restaurant with a beer and wine license that's located on the 45th Street corridor. And we've done the background check, and there are no issues involved on this one.
Okay, and I apologize for asking additional questions. So are all these licenses then, they're not the type that they are going to be owned? They're the cities, and then, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. All licenses issued after 2014 was when we made the ordinance change. Those licenses are no longer transferable, with the exception of if it's a going concern. So if the business is continuing and new owners are coming in, especially if it's a bar setting, that type of thing, somebody that's buying the business, and again, especially if it's a bar, you're not going to be able to operate a bar without the liquor license. And so in those cases, then the license is allowed to be transferred. But in a case, like this, with it being a restaurant, if that restaurant were to close, that license comes back to the city.
And then, so one more follow-up, and then it says with the Class GH that food must exceed alcohol. So then we monitor to make sure that their food sales, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, on an annual basis, when we do our license renewal, the restaurants are required to report their food sales. And we do that looking at the sales tax percentages. The sales tax on food is 5%, and sales tax on alcohol is 2.5% higher. And so it's two components to the sales tax report. And so that's what we look at to monitor that. And then on a 3-year rotating basis, then we hire an auditor. So we get some external eyes to look at it. And then that auditor goes out and does the comparisons. They also look at those ratios. And then if it gets close to that 50-50, so between 50 and about 55 or 60%, we have them run industry averages to see that, they're not recording, a pop sale or recording a beer sale as a pop or something like that. So we kind of have a couple ways to look at it, and we monitor those.
Very good, thank you. So I don't know if there's any further questions, otherwise we will accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 2D, Five Star African Cuisine, doing business as Five Star African Cuisine to be located at 855 45th Street South for a Class GH alcoholic beverage license.
So again, this is a GH, again, a beer and wine. Food sales must exceed alcohol sales. The alcohol service is only at a table or booth. And for the members that were on the board a couple of months ago, you'll remember this came forward and there were some questions on the application. And so the direction of the board was to have the applicant reapply so that we had a correct application on file. And so that's what we've done. And you have the comments from the police officer doing the investigation and then from the chief. And it does come with a recommendation of approval.
So if you don't mind me asking, and Chief, I don't know if you want to get up and talk, but I appreciate you, we did this follow-up interview, and so from your perspective, it was the matter clarified to your satisfaction? I guess that's my question. And we do have it in front of us, so thank you for that.
Sure. I think to answer your question now, yes, although I think that this applicant has some difficulty understanding certain terminology, but we believe that he's providing truthful information. And with that, we don't see a reason not to approve it at this juncture.
Okay, and just to speak for our new members, we had some concerns because the appearance was that they weren't being fully truthful, but it could have been that it was just a little bit lost in translation.
Yeah, the original application talked about certain driving violations in which he answered no to, but had in fact had violations. And when we followed up, his response was that he didn't understand very well and always answered no, something to that effect. So we went back and had a more in-depth conversation. Again, I think he still has difficulty understanding specific terminology and what that means, but we have the information that we believe is necessary.
So I don't know if there are any further questions about that, but the other members that were here, I think you recall that. And so that was an issue. But to me, from my perspective, if it's your satisfaction, I think that's, from my perspective, the same thing. So any other comments or questions for the chief or any other of the topics? Otherwise, are we ready to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any other comments or questions? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next step is 3, the police department monthly report, and 3A is the general report. Chief.
Good afternoon. So for the new commissioners that might not be familiar with this, we generally set out a spreadsheet with our liquor establishment forms that are filed by the officers when they get sent to an establishment, either due to a call for service or self-initiated activity, and it involves the operations of that licensed premise or the personnel that work there. And so that information is documented. We track that and report it to this board on a monthly basis, and it also forms the basis sometimes for action that is recommended or taken by the board. So just in reviewing the July reports, and I guess on a good note, there's only 9 reports filed, and there's actually been a downtrend in incidents that have been reported, but some of the ones that have been reported are somewhat troubling. We do have a criminal investigation that occurred out of the old Broadway involving the bouncers. Both of those individuals have been criminally charged by the state's attorney's office. And the city attorney is reviewing if there are any other potential liquor violations that may come before this board. So that's the update on that particular case. We have another situation at the Windbreak where a pretty severe over-intoxication. Again, for the new members, the Windbreak is signed on to an agreement with the city to do some additional steps to minimize underage drinking, over-intoxication, and other operational issues. So this over-intoxication case, we're still following up on obtaining video to see what that looks like. And again, we may bring that forward for additional action, but we don't have all of that information yet in order to determine if there's going to be a recommendation to you on that one. So expect these 2 last items to come in the September meeting if there's any action to be made. And then we have a situation that happened downtown at one of our establishments as well, where we've got a referral for violation of serving drinks after the closure of the restaurant. I've also got a call into the health department relative to any other potential violations there. Again, I would caution that the information here is basically for the board to know and not to proliferate until we have more substantial information.
And so, Chief, if you don't mind, so on one of those, there was a YouTube video with a bouncer, and I think they contacted almost all of us to have a comment. And I think we have a good system, we have a good process, and so sometimes I think, from my perspective, you have to be careful what to say. Obviously, it was not a good situation, but we need to know what the facts are, and so that's why we have the Liquor Control Board, and that's why we have the police to. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I do think we have a good system.
Yeah, no, I think it's much improved in terms of that communication and information. In that particular case, it wasn't reported to us. It came to our attention as well through citizen calls and social media. We were able to track down the victim, and from there, were able to put a case together, and the state's attorney's office issued charges. So we certainly appreciate cooperation of the public in that, because obviously this conduct, and I'm sure it's not condoned by the ownership either, but this goes into these other conversations about training for bouncers, de-escalation, that type of thing.
Can I ask one more, Chief? So the windbreak, obviously, we've had some issues. We have an agreement. So would you say that's going to be ongoing and then you're going to come back in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. We pushed the agreement out to our personnel so they're aware of it because it's above and beyond the ordinance requirements. And so when there's an issue, one of the things they did agree to was providing video and those types of things. So we're going to look at that video and determine if, if there's any violations relative to this very high level of over intoxication that this individual suffered. She had to be taken by ambulance to the hospital.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I think the topic of the security people, I don't like calling them bouncers, but the doormen or the security people, I think that's something that we probably should put down as a meeting item because we've had two fairly serious incidents recently and both of them have occurred outside of the bar. And to my knowledge, most bar owners don't want their security people going outside of their building to handle things. I think there's exceptions where sometimes security people will walk, a girl to her car or if somebody feels threatened or whatever, they'll do that, which is a great service. But in both these incidences, they happened out on the city streets or whatever. So whether that becomes an ordinance, a rule, a recommendation or whatever, especially as this de-escalation training develops, I think maybe we should have some guidelines for security people. It's got to be the toughest job in the world. And, but it is, what happened is shocking and, et cetera. So that's my comment on that.
No, I appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
Just kind of unrelated, but as long as the chief is up there, I just was in Nashville over the weekend, which makes downtown Fargo look like a Class B 9-man team. But I was amazed at how many police officers are on the street and, how many people are on the street. Maybe kind of give us an update where we're at downtown. My wife and I live pretty close. Lots of times we're walking around, we see police officers. So from my perspective, at least in the evening, feels like we have a lot more coverage, but maybe kind of give us an update on where we're at as a city.
Yeah, well, one of the things we did intentionally into this summer was increase our presence downtown and come up with some different staffing plans to have more personnel down at closing time. And I think the summer has been, not terrible, relatively pretty well, although now that college is starting, this is actually more of the raucous time. So we'll see how things go into the fall. We've got some additional special operations plans to increase staffing and do things similar to last year where we utilized highway patrol to enforce DUIs and things of that nature. So we're going to continue to work with our partners to increase presence downtown at those specified times.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? And so,
I have a quick question for the
Robert,
chief.
sorry.
In our report we got, Chief, there was a mention of a all-out brawl downtown. And maybe it's too early for you to talk about that, but I was curious if we monitor that for those being rival groups or anything like that.
Well, that actually, if the one you're talking about is not downtown, there was a report of some large fight outside of Southtown Poorhouse on the south side. Is that what you're talking about?
When I read it, I thought it was the downtown place, but.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, District 64 had a large fight. I don't know that that's an all-out brawl. One person was arrested. I mean,
okay.
it's, I don't think that's anything as you're describing, other
Okay.
than a disturbance that everyone would like to not see happen.
Okay, Chief. And so then the next item on the agenda is the 3B minors on licensed premises. And if you're going
Yeah.
to talk, go ahead.
Yes, so this is a follow-up from a meeting or two ago where we had some underage persons in an establishment. We've been working with the city attorney's office on those potential violations and also met with and talked with the owners to see what information they may be able to provide. And we have determined to request a special meeting so that we can provide that information to the board for, we'll have a recommendation and let the board make a decision on that.
Thank you very much. So that's it for the chief. So we'll move on to number 4, other items, and we have a few. That's the end of our agenda. So we have 4A, to request to increase Class C and Class W licenses. Steve, you start us with that.
Yes, a couple of months ago, I was here just with try to preemptive strike, I guess you'd say, where I'd requested additional CW licenses so that as business plans came along that had, really fit well in there, that we could continue working with those business owners. Was instructed that let's wait and see if we get more applications. 2 that are out there pending, additional licenses are listed. And then after the agenda came out, there was another one that I was made aware of, the 1889, which is going into the Wimmers building, and they're looking at a W license. And then I got a call just yesterday about a potential salon that's going in South Fargo area, and they were interested in a CW license. So for the new board members, the C license allows the alcohol establishment to sell beer with a bar and not having any food sales, and the W kind of pairs with the C, and that allows them to sell wine. So we put them together in some cases to make a CW license where they can sell beer and wine, no food sales required, and they would be allowed to have a physical bar. In these cases here, the 4 businesses, the one that's listed, the 4050 Lounge, is essentially primarily like a barbershop or a haircut facility. That's what they're planning, and then they would have a lounge facility attached to that. The one that I got the call for yesterday was a similar concept, only more, barber for men and a salon for women. So they were thinking like a salon type thing. The 1889 that I mentioned that we have an application in on, which is going in the Wimmers building, and that one is where they're going to do, it's more of a cooking. So you bring your ingredients in, or maybe they provide the ingredients. I'm not real clear on that. You prepare the meal, and then in order to be able to pair that with a wine or something like that, then they wanted to have a wine license. And so that's, so we're talking a lot of different concepts and different ideas again. And then the Uncorked Lounge was essentially just what she's looking at is something similar to Crafty Taps, where they have different taps. Instead of beer, they would have taps of wine, and just a relaxed area where people could just kind of unwind a little bit and not in kind of these overcrowded or kind of a little higher energy facilities, that type of thing. So that's the request. If the request for additional licenses is approved, it would be a recommendation that would go to City Commission, and then City Commission would direct the city attorney to modify the ordinances to allow us to have the additional licenses.
So Steve, this had something to do with our population, correct?
Not these licenses.
Oh,
No,
so these are separate
these
from
are
those?
these licenses. When we created the C and the W licenses, we just put a cap on it. We said 10, and that lasted for probably 4 or 5 years before we ran out of those 10. And we were getting to the end of that back in June when I came to the board here. And so now, again, these concepts are coming up, right? And these ideas, and now there may be ways for, like the Uncorked Lounge. Well, if they did food, then they could do, other, so they would have to modify their business plan in order to get the liquor license. And like I said before, this is just like a tool in my tool chest to be able to get people in the right licenses. I hate to see them get a license where they're required to do something that they really didn't want to do, and then down the road we're ending up having to sanction them in some way because they're not meeting the sales goals and that type of thing.
Can I ask you, Steve?
Yes.
But these requests, they still have to go through a background check, correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So this, are you just asking us, this is like a preliminary question before it comes to us formally? Is that what
That, that is correct. Yep. These, three of these, I forgot to list one of them, the 1889. The other ones, I have the applications on my desk. They're basically pending getting approval to have more licenses.
So I guess from my perspective, I'd be interested to know how many do we have out and how, was there, like you said, was there a number, was there?
Well, there was
a cap?
10. We created 10 Class C licenses and 10 Class W licenses. And, you know, some businesses took just the W, some took just the C, most took both the C and the W together. We've used up all of those 10 that we had available. And so that's why we're back here.
So, but that's my question. It'd be interesting to know, so how many years has that been that we've taken that? This is for future questions. You don't have to answer it today. But also then, what do you have in mind? Then should we add that number similar since the population has increased? That's my question. So I think there's more to it from my perspective to find out what the history is before we move on, I guess. I totally support, you've been very good at having these new businesses, make sure they get the right type of license.
Right.
But I just want to know what the pace is and what we're doing. That's just from my perspective, and I apologize for asking so many questions, but that's just, and if anybody has any more, go ahead. But Steve, will you comment on what I'm asking?
Yeah, yes, sir. So, you know, right off the top of my head, I think it's probably been about 5 years since we set that limit at 10. And, you know, so probably about 2 a year. It's kind of the pace. It appears in the last 2 months that maybe the pace is picking up a little bit. And the interesting thing too, Commissioner, is that to get a CW license, it's a $15,000 initial fee, right? And if they got the GH license, which is beer and wine also, but now they have to have a restaurant. So if they got that license, the fee is only $1,800. So the businesses are finding the license that most appropriate or most fits what they want to do. And so rather than, you know, saying, hey, I'll save, $13,000 and I'll get the GH and have a restaurant. That's not what they want to do, you know, and I don't see any of these, you know, as being places, none of them, first of all, are in the downtown area where we have a high density of alcohol. All of them are servicing areas that are away from downtown as Fargo continues to grow. And well, I'll take that back. The 1889 is in the Wimmer building. So, but none of them are really having the plan of trying to get in the bar business, really. I mean, they just want to have a relaxed atmosphere, a place to have a wine or a beer. And
So I got a pretty basic question. So you said they were issued 10 Class C and 10 Class W. If I did a CW, did I take 2 of the 20 then?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So a CW is one from each category.
So I guess you'd say this is a preliminary conversation, and so there's more to talk about.
Well, you know, a number of these businesses would like to, you know, move ahead. They've started some remodeling and, you know, but if you want to bring it back for more discussion, we can come back in a month and any information you'd like to have, I can try to put together.
I guess I would like to have more of the questions answered about the numbers and our pace, but also, I mean, they're still gonna have to do a background check. And
Yes.
you have to make sure their staff is gonna have to go through the same liquor server training that everyone else does, correct?
Yes,
So there's
all
a
the
lot-
provisions apply. Yeah.
And so I think that's the main thing, that we want to make sure we're doing all those things. You don't want to make their starting a new business difficult, but I think you got to make sure that's just my perspective. Go ahead, Robert, sorry.
I think, to me, the debate is more than, you know, Steve, you do a great job administrating this, but call me old-fashioned, but we're getting to the point, I mean, do hair salons really need to be serving beer and wine? Does that mean the guy who runs the parts store should be able to have a little Super Bowl party? I mean, it's food and wine and beer and spirits, that goes together. We've promoted that through the way you've built the licenses and created opportunity. And I know there's barbers around town that have a little cooler beer. They're probably not even licensed, I don't know. And there's other places that have been licensed. I just think there's a debate there somewhere, at least from my standpoint. So,
There are a couple of the people that are present. I don't know if you want to hear their comments or.
No, absolutely. If somebody wants to get up and talk, we'd love to have you here. But I will say, to give you an example, so the hotels, they now have a social, some of the manager, I don't know what they call it, but manager hours. And so they do have that. And so that's kind of goes into that debate too. But like you said, what determines who serves alcohol
yeah, right.
I don't know about if I went to a barber shop and got my haircut, I would want to make sure the barber is sober because my haircut's,
I don't think it's the staff that's drinking, but.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Mark.
Sure. Mark Bjornstead. I'm owner of Drecker Brewing Company. I'm obviously not an applicant for one of these licenses, but I want to give you guys some perspective on what I see. We distribute to 32 different states. I'm in every one of those states at least once a year in markets. Fargo is at least 10 years behind what is going on out in major metro areas, and we've just started to see what some of these new models are. Steve's done an incredible job trying to find a way in the rubric to get those licenses for people, but there is going to be an onslaught of new concepts coming, and that doesn't mean more consumption to town. It means new concepts that don't necessarily fit what we've done. And I guess I would encourage the Liquor Control Board to simply remove the ban or remove the limit on these licenses. Every applicant still has to come to you. Every plan has to get approved by you. The limit is somewhat arbitrary, and these are two of the most common licenses that people are using, and we should open the market up and let the market decide what they want. Bring everyone in front of the Liquor Control Board and go through all the process that everyone else does. But my recommendation and what I see on the market is just eliminate the limit on these and let people apply, let the new businesses come, and the market will decide what stays.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. If you don't mind just giving your name or address when you get up,
Yeah.
we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jessica Medler. I am one of the applicants for Uncorked Lounge. We are a purely just wine lounge, more geared towards the feminine, I guess I would say, of Fargo Moorhead. As we think about the types of establishments in Fargo, it does gear itself more towards the sports bar, right? So women who want to go and have a relaxing night, maybe with their girlfriends on a date, by themselves even, it is hard to find establishments outside of your home in this location. And like he said, we are behind the times. You go to Minneapolis, they have self-serve wine lounges, they have just different establishments that are available. Now, we will have food, but it's not going to be a major portion of our sales. And so that 50+% is very daunting to us. So I would really appreciate, if not getting rid of the cap, just adding a few more as the city grows. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
So I am representing Lax Lounge, which is one of the applicants for the CW license. So we would be a sister company to Skill Cuts Barbershop and Salon, which is our high volume barbershop. Obviously, there's no alcohol served there. This would be more of a high-end barbershop where that you're coming in appointment only, more hot towel shaves, high-end services, have a glass of wine when you're done in the lounge. In addition to that, we would bring in a lot of corporate groups such as Bell Bank into Skill Cuts. They have asked that they would love to do corporate events on the lounge side where they can do more of a wine or beer piece, groomsmen parties, etc. So our question is the same as everybody else, is just removing that cap so that we can broaden the barbershop space within Fargo Moorhead.
Thank you. Next, please.
It's not about this topic.
Now's your chance if you want to get up and talk.
Hi, how you guys doing? My name is Chuck from District 64. Just wanted to point out, because the gentleman over here had asked about fights, and the chief said there was a fight at District 64. I wanted to point out the fight was not at District 64. It was outside our building on city property, just like what happened in Poorhouse or at the OB. It was on city property with two customers. One of them happened to be employed, but he wasn't working that night. He was just there as a patron to enjoy his night. He was not dressed in any of our formal attire that they have to wear. This literally is two guys fighting on city property, nothing to do with us. So just wanted to point that out. I'll be proud to say we haven't had a fight in our building in about 4 or 5 months now. So
Thank you.
Faith Dixon. I wanted to know if you guys can elaborate on the minors on the licensed premises and why that requires a special meeting. Are you all able to say what premises they were at?
Chief, I don't know if you want to answer that question, but it's basically, we're going to have a meeting talking about that subject. Isn't that what I understood? You're talking about the 3B, the special meeting on September 13th?
Yes, that's correct.
If you don't mind answering that, that'd be great.
We had previously brought to your attention some violations in May for minors in liquor establishment, 2 separate occasions in May, and informed you that we were meeting with the owners to see what other information they could provide in terms of how those individuals may or may not have gotten into the establishment. We've received that information. I consulted with the city attorney. We would like to bring that information before the board. It was her suggestion that we plan a special meeting so we don't take up substantial time at a regular meeting for that to occur.
Is that meeting public?
Of course.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so will there be recommendations as far as that establishment, or what would that recommendation look like?
I think that will happen when we get to the meeting, and proper notice will be served by our auditor.
Okay, and can you elaborate on the?
You know what, we're not, this isn't a question and answer.
No,
This
it
is-
wasn't. My
this-
first question was to you, Commissioner Pepcorn, was the names of those establishments.
No, like I said, we were here to talk about the topic of the C&W licenses. This isn't a time for question and answers. So we'll move on to, unless there's more discussion about that, I think what we'll do is push this onto the agenda for the next meetings. Are you looking for something specific from us, Steve?
The motion that I would like to see is, again, I'm looking at it from my chair and my point of view. I would like to see the liquor board request the city commission to direct the attorney to increase the number of licenses. One comment that hasn't been made yet is when you cap those licenses, what you do is what's coming to mind is black market, but that's not the right words. You create an inflated value of those licenses, and we're seeing that with the A's and the ABs and those types of licenses. And so that's what I'd be afraid of that we do with the CW is that we say, hey, we're gonna sit at 10, and if you want that kind of license, then go buy it from somebody else or something like that, that type of thing. And so rather than do that, I would rather just have those licenses available. I think that it's a good alternative to the full alcohol license that we have. And so that's just a staff's
But I guess my perspective is I would like to know more about what the pace is, how many, we started with, and because from my perspective, it's good for us to know how are we increasing? What are the numbers? And so especially when we have 2 new members to know what, instead of just saying, well, let's just remove the cap. And I think it's better that's part of the reason we're here is to know what's going on.
Okay.
I guess that's my thing. So for the next meeting, I'd like to have us know a little bit more, and I think that would give everybody a little bit more of a comfort level. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Robert.
I'd like to add to that, Commissioner. I agree. I mean, we can do this as they come along. I think both the people that spoke, they sound like they have good business plans and they'd be good places for Fargo and interesting, et cetera. But I think there needs to be some type of a checks and balance. And you're that first line, and so we've always trusted you. You've done a great job with that over the years. But I think just picking a number, whether it's 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever, is is unnecessary. That's just my opinion.
So if it's okay with you, Steve, I know you would like us to make a motion, but I think I'd like to continue with this till the next meeting and have some more discussion about that and given us an opportunity to learn more.
Okay, I will bring back more information at the next meeting.
Very good, thank you. And next, so that's 4A, and now we'll move to 4B, the additional Z and B licenses, if you want to talk about that, Steve.
Yes, so again, roll back a couple of months, the estimated population in the city of Fargo went over 130,000. At that 130,000 level, it triggered 2 additional licenses be created. A Z, which is a full alcohol license, just a street bar type of license. There are no requirements for food sales. They can have the bar, it's full alcohol. And then the B Limited, which is the off-sale version of our liquor licenses, both are triggered to population. When those licenses were created, we created X number of licenses, and then every 10,000 past that, we've issued additional licenses. Currently, all of those licenses have been issued. And so at 130,000, it triggered the additional 2 licenses. And so we went to the city commission, who declared that our population was indeed at 130,000. And then we came back later with a recommendation on what that path forward was, a resolution that established that we would advertise for a number of months, receive all applications. Once the time period is closed for receipt of applications, then we would process all of the applications that we had gotten at that time. All of those applications would come here to the liquor board to review, and then they would be forwarded to city commission with recommendations of approval or denial. And there are a number of factors that go into considering whether or not to issue a liquor license. Some of those are proximities to other licensed establishments or proximities to churches and schools and different things like that. So I guess the biggest thing right now is the date is October 27th. We will accept applications until October 27th. I think it's at 4 p.m. And at that time, then we will process all of the applications that we have received. And then they would all be brought back here for your review.
That's great. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And so if you don't mind me asking, if there are more licenses requests than we have, then what's the process?
Sure. So I think the ordinance reads, should the number of applications exceed the number then available, there would be a drawing at the city commission to determine who the applicant that would get the license would be.
That's great. Thank you. And so if you have anything else to add, otherwise the last item on our agenda is the de-escalation training. Scott and I attended the one yesterday, and actually several people in the room attended as well. It was very well attended. And so if you want to talk about that, Steve.
Yeah, so the first, we lined up 4 de-escalation trainings. They're called Green Dot training. And the first one only had 2 attendees. So we put on a bigger push to make sure that people were aware of this one. And so the attendance I've heard was around, in the 70s, 75, something like that. The unfortunate, the good side of it is that it's free. It was free for everybody to attend. There were no pre-registration and no costs involved. The bad side was that it was focused on things other than what we were thinking of in the industry. And so I've received a number of less than stellar comments from people in the industry and from other people that attended. And so I think what I'm going to do is further explore the de-escalation training that's offered through the North Dakota Safety Council. That does come with a little bit of a price tag. I was just doing some math before we came in, and if we set a fee of $25 a head, we had 105 people attend, we could split it over 2 sessions, then we would cover our costs. So we'll probably further explore that and see if we can get a date set. And then we would have to find a way for the industry to sign up and pay, to make sure that we've got it fully covered.
I think that'd be great, because the main thing was what we were looking for, to help with security concerns. And it was a great it was interesting, but it wasn't exactly what we were looking for. And so I think from our perspective, if we can do something that's a little more tailored for helping security at bars and restaurants, that's kind of what we're looking for. And Scott, I don't know if you have any comments or anybody else does, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was a great opportunity to have, like you said, 60, 70 people in a room from different businesses. I think it'd be a great time to have an open forum, to have people give their best practices on, there was one best practice on how they scan their ID and how it shows their full face on an iPad. So that customer knows that they're being tracked in that establishment. Another best practice was, videotapes where the video cameras are showing the monitors. Really quick snapshots, really good, not necessarily, in depth, but just overall best practices. When you get that many people from that many different establishments, I think there's a good opportunity of just having an open forum just to give some different feedback from what's successful in their establishments.
Yeah, I would like to check with the safety council just to see what their program, maybe I can get an agenda or something like that, and we can kind of vet it a little bit before we sign up with them. We want to make sure that we're going to get the training that we're looking for, so.
That's great. So if you just can keep us updated on that, because I was impressed that there was that many people there. And so you can tell the businesses want things to be done that will help them be better. And so that was the good sign from my perspective. But I do agree that when you have, especially the veteran owners and employees, they have a lot of things that newer employees could learn without having to go through the real world difficulties. And so I think that having an opportunity to share what works the best would be a good thing. So,
Commissioner, there's one thing I want to kind of loop back here on 3B, setting that special meeting. I think we should have a motion. I'm not sure that we got that motion to set the September 13th as a meeting date.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the time yet and the room availability.
Okay.
But if we could at least set the date, I think that would
Okay.
help.
Are we ready? Is somebody willing to make a motion for that meeting on September 13th?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order, Steve?
That's
Very
it, sir.
good. Well, thank you for the 2 new members, and thank everybody for attending, and we are adjourned. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.